What shattered mind lies behind the greatest philosophy of suffering ever conceived? A mother's cruelty so extreme it would make media blush. A loneliness so vast it swallowed continents, and one terrifying revelation. Your entire life has been scripted by a woman's love or neglect. Schopenhauer didn't just predict male suffering. He dissected its origin with surgical precision, leaving us a corpse on the table called mother love and the scalpel to autopsy ourselves. Imagine a boy no older than 6 standing frozen in the doorway of his parents' bedroom. His father, a hollow-cheeked merchant, lies wheezing in bed, his body devoured by tuberculosis. His mother, Johanna Schopenhauer, a woman whose beauty was matched only by her cruelty, sits at a writing desk, scribbling letters to her lovers. The boy, Arthur, clutches a toy soldier, waiting for her to turn around. She never does. Decades later, that boy would write, "The happiness of most men is ruined by marriage and family life, just as a poisonous plant ruins the soil around it." This is not a sad story. This is a case study. Schopenhauer's hatred for his mother wasn't petty resentment, it was forensic. He dissected her influence with the precision of a surgeon. And what he found was this: your mother's emotional absence doesn't just hurt you, it architects your entire existence. Modern psychology calls it attachment theory. Schopenhauer called it the will's betrayal by the very hand that should have nourished it. Let's pause here. Think of the last time you felt an inexplicable rage. Not at your boss, not at the world, but at something deeper, something you couldn't name. That's not depression, that's not anxiety. That's the ghost of your mother's neglect whispering to you from the cellar of your subconscious. A 2007 study in the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry found that men who experienced maternal rejection before age 7 were 300% more likely to develop narcissistic or avoidant personality disorders. Schopenhauer knew this before the study existed. He wrote, "The boy who is denied love learns 2 things, that he is unworthy of it, and that he must become worthy by force." Now let's talk about force. In 19th century Germany, a man named Daniel Schreiber, a judge and father of the infamous paranoid schizophrenic memoirs of My Nervous Illness, raised his son under a regime of soul murder, cold baths at dawn, rigid posture drills, and a whip for any display of weakness. The son, Daniel Paul Schreiber, would later hallucinate God turning him into a woman. Freud analyzed him, Lacan analyzed him, but Schopenhauer would have recognized the pattern instantly. A mother's emotional absence is replaced by a father's tyranny, and the boy is left with a choice: collapse into madness or weaponize his suffering. Schopenhauer chose the latter. His mother, Johanna, was a celebrated novelist. She hosted salons with Goethe and mocked her son's dullness in front of guests. When Arthur published his first book on the fourfold root of the principle of sufficient reason, she sneered, "A book written by you, unreadable." He never spoke to her again. 20 years later, her corpse was found half-eaten by rats in her mansion. Schopenhauer, upon hearing the news, wrote a single line in his journal: "The will has corrected its mistake." This is where most men fail. They think their mother's neglect was an accident, a footnote in their story. Schopenhauer knew better. He understood that a boy unloved by his mother does one of 3 things. He destroys himself through alcohol, recklessness, suicide. He destroys others through narcissism, tyranny, cruelty, or he transcends. Which path have you taken? Here's the uncomfortable truth about men. If you've ever felt annoying emptiness after coitus, a rage at women who ignore you, or a compulsive need to prove yourself in business or the gym, you are not broken, you are programmed. A 2015 Harvard study found that men with emotionally distant mothers were 47% more likely to engage in high-risk behaviors, from gambling to extreme sports. Schopenhauer called it the will's rebellion against its own starvation. But there's a way out. Schopenhauer's escape wasn't therapy, it wasn't love. It was art, aestheticism, and the ruthless examination of suffering. He never married, he never sought approval. He lived alone with a poodle named Atma, Sanskrit for soul, and wrote The World as Will and Representation, a book so dense it was used as a doorstop for decades. Yet buried in its pages is the key to male redemption, the realization that your mother's failure was never about you. It was about her own enslavement to the will, the blind, screaming force that drives all life to reproduce and suffer. So ask yourself, are you still that boy in the doorway waiting for her to turn around? Or are you ready to see the truth that her neglect was the greatest gift she could have given you? Because a man unloved is a man who cannot be controlled. But what if I told you Schopenhauer's hatred of women wasn't hatred at all? What if it was the only form of love he could trust? Now we dive into the forbidden text where Schopenhauer reveals why women fear the men they create, and how you can weaponize that fear to reclaim your soul. There's a passage in his private journals, never published in his lifetime, scrubbed from early editions by scandalized editors. In it, he writes something so venomous, so brutally honest, that it makes Beyond Good and Evil read like a nursery rhyme. It's a single line scribbled in the margin of a draft. Women do not love men. They love what men can become and hate what they do. Let that sink in. This isn't the ranting of a lonely misanthrope. This is the observation of a man who watched his mother, a woman of letters in high society, charm Goethe. Hey buddy, you've watched to this point. We believe you find value from this video. Do well to subscribe and hit the bell button for more psychology and philosophy videos like this. Now let's continue our video. She charmed Goethe with one hand while strangling her son's spirit with the other. Johanna Schopenhauer didn't just neglect Arthur. She studied him the way a biologist studies a failed experiment. And in that cold clinical disdain, Schopenhauer discovered a universal law. A woman's love is conditional upon your utility, and her contempt is inevitable once you fulfill it. You have felt this in your own life too. That girlfriend who adored you when you were struggling, but lost respect the moment you succeeded. The mother who praised your humility as a boy, but mocked your ambition as a man. Even the female readers of this very channel will dismiss these words as bitter, while secretly recognizing their own manipulations. Schopenhauer called it the maternal paradox, the biological program to nurture potential yet resent it fulfilled. A 2013 study in Personality and Social Psychology Review confirmed it. Women consistently rated ambitious men as more attractive until those men achieved dominance, at which point they were perceived as threatening. History is littered with the corpses of men who failed to grasp this. Take Friedrich Nietzsche, Schopenhauer's intellectual heir, who craved the approval of women but was driven mad by their betrayal. His mother, Franziska, smothered him with piety and guilt. His sister Elizabeth forged his manuscripts to fit her agenda. And Lou Salome, the woman he loved, used his vulnerability as material for her psychoanalytic experiments. By the time Nietzsche collapsed in a Turin street, hugging a horse and weeping, he'd already written the truth in Zarathustra. You go to women, do not forget the whip. But it was too late for him. The women in his life had already wielded it. Schopenhauer escaped this fate through sheer unflinching disgust. He never married. He never debased himself for female validation. Instead, he turned his loneliness into a weapon, writing, "The more a man is capable of solitude, the more he understands the horror of being needed." And here's where most men fail, mistaking women's dependency for value or respect. They assume that because women need them for protection, resources, status, they must therefore value them. Schopenhauer knew better. He saw that dependency breeds resentment and resentment breeds cruelty. Consider the case of King Ludwig II of Bavaria, the mad king who built Neuschwanstein, the castle that inspired Disney's Sleeping Beauty. Ludwig surrounded himself with beauty, art, and myth, yet he was destroyed. Why? Because the very society that depended on him for wealth and vision resented him for being what they could not. The same paradox Schopenhauer identified in the family was magnified in the state. Those you serve will come to hate you for serving them too well. Ludwig's ministers declared him insane, stripped him of power, and within days he was found dead in shallow water. Was it suicide or assassination?